There's a reason the wealthiest people in the world can walk into any room and command it without raising their voice. It's not just the money in their accounts, it's the language they speak. Because the true elite don't just own wealth, they embody it. They've mastered the invisible art of communication that turns words into influence, conversations into opportunities, and silence into power. Today, I want to show you how they do it. Not through arrogance or manipulation, but through clarity, control, and connection. These are the 5 ways the 1% speak differently and how you can too. They speak with purpose, not noise. That's the quiet distinction between those who influence the world and those merely trying to be heard in it. The difference isn't always in vocabulary or even intelligence, it's in intention. The 1% understand that words are instruments of creation. Every syllable carries weight, every pause is deliberate, and every sentence is a brick in the structure of meaning they're building. Most people speak to fill silence, to soften discomfort, to prove they exist. But the elite, they speak to shape silence. They know that a word offered without purpose is like a coin tossed into an empty well. It makes a sound, but achieves nothing. When they open their mouths, it isn't to entertain or impress, but to direct, to clarify, or to build trust. Their speech doesn't wander, it arrives. Think of someone like Warren Buffett, who once remarked, "You can't make a good deal with a bad person." 10 words. No metaphor, no performance, yet in that brevity lies an entire philosophy about ethics, business, and human nature. That is the language of purpose, sharp, distilled, unpretentious, the kind of language that doesn't merely sound wise, but is wise because it comes from clarity. The elite don't clutter their speech with noise because they don't clutter their minds with it. If you've ever sat in a room where someone truly powerful spoke, you know the feeling. It isn't the volume that commands attention, it's the weight behind every word. They don't rush, they don't stumble over filler words. Their speech carries rhythm, a sense of quiet inevitability, as though the outcome of the conversation is already known to them. You find yourself leaning in, not because they're loud, but because they're intent. Contrast that with the average meeting or conversation today. People interrupting, repeating themselves, drowning their message in a flood of ums and you-knows. We live in a world that rewards noise, constant updates, endless commentary, voices that never rest. But power is not found in endless talking. It's found in knowing when not to speak, and in having the courage to be silent until you have something worth saying. This kind of purposeful speech doesn't come naturally, it's cultivated. The elite practice it over years of observation, reflection, and restraint. They learn to listen more than they speak, to study tone and timing as much as content. When they finally do speak, they've already considered what the listener values, fears, and needs. Their words are not thrown into the air like sparks. They're placed carefully, like stones forming a bridge. There's an old story about a successful investor who rarely spoke during negotiations. Instead, he would sit quietly, hands folded, eyes thoughtful. His competitors would fill the silence with nervous chatter, over-explaining, over-promising, and then, after 10 minutes of listening, he would say one line, one decisive statement that reframed the entire conversation. That was enough. He didn't win through volume, he won through precision. Purposeful speech has another trait. It's free of ego. The 1% do not speak to prove they're smart. They speak to achieve an outcome. Their focus is outward, not inward. They ask questions that open doors, not statements that shut them. They say, "Tell me more often than "let me explain." Because purpose-driven communication isn't about displaying power. It's about using power effectively. You'll notice that when the truly influential people speak, they often choose simple, clear language. They avoid jargon and exaggeration. They understand that complexity can cloud understanding. Simplicity, on the other hand, demands mastery. It takes confidence to express something profound in plain words. The insecure hide behind fancy phrasing. The wise hide behind clarity. There's a deeper reason for this restraint. The elite know that attention is the most valuable currency in the world, and words are the price you pay for it. Every extra word, every meaningless phrase, every careless statement dilutes your credibility. A purposeful speaker spends their words like gold, rarely, thoughtfully, and with intention. And because they do, people listen when they speak. Purposeful speaking also creates emotional impact. Think of the time someone said something so honest, so stripped of performance, that it stayed with you for years. Perhaps it was a teacher who told you, "You're capable of more than this," or a mentor who said, "Don't confuse motion with progress." Short sentences, simple words, but they change something inside you. That's the essence of purposeful speech. It leaves marks. It's not about having the perfect diction or accent. It's about speaking from a place of alignment, where your words, beliefs, and actions match. When that happens, people don't just hear you, they feel you. That's what separates a talker from a communicator, a speaker from a leader. But there's another layer to speaking with purpose, listening with purpose. The elite understand that listening is not waiting for your turn to speak. It's the gathering of ammunition. They listen to understand motives, to catch the unsaid, to read between lines. Because when you truly listen, you can respond with precision, not reaction. And that precision is what turns ordinary dialogue into influence. In one of the most telling habits of great leaders, you'll often see them pause before answering a question. That pause isn't hesitation, it's control. It tells the room, "I am thinking carefully about this." It slows the tempo, forces others to adjust to their rhythm. That's how power moves, not at the pace of urgency, but at the pace of intention. Purposeful speakers also understand timing. They know when to intervene, when to stay quiet, and when to let their words breathe. They don't fear silence, because silence to them isn't emptiness, it's emphasis. A well-placed pause can say more than a paragraph ever could. It gives the listener space to absorb, to reflect, to anticipate what comes next. The elite use silence as punctuation, every bit as intentional as their words. If you want to speak like them, begin by slowing down. Before you say anything, ask yourself 3 questions. Why am I saying this? Who is it for? What do I want it to accomplish? That tiny pause of awareness will save you from countless empty words and misunderstandings. Because once you start treating words like tools instead of toys, you'll discover their true value. Purposeful speech also means aligning tone with intention. You can say the right words in the wrong tone and lose the meaning entirely. The elite are masters of tone. They know when to soften, when to assert, when to question, and when to affirm. Their speech feels balanced, deliberate, and grounded. It doesn't fluctuate with emotion, it guides it. And here's the truth. Anyone can learn this. You don't need to be wealthy or famous to speak with purpose. You only need self-awareness and discipline. Train yourself to notice how often you talk just to fill space. Replace that habit with reflection. Before a conversation, decide what you want to contribute. During it, listen more than you speak. After it, reflect on what your words accomplished. That's how refinement begins, not in grandeur, but in mindfulness. And eventually something remarkable happens. People begin to treat your words differently. They wait when you pause. They quote you when you leave. They start to believe that if you're speaking, it must matter. And that belief, that quiet authority, is how the 1% build influence that outlasts wealth itself. So when they speak with purpose, not noise, they aren't just communicating. They're constructing worlds. They are shaping perceptions, crafting outcomes, and directing energy. Their words don't drift away. They endure. Because in a world deafened by endless chatter, the voice that speaks with intention doesn't have to shout to be heard. It simply speaks, and the world listens. They use calm as a weapon, not the kind of calm that comes from stillness or detachment, but the kind that is earned through mastery. the quiet strength of someone who has nothing left to prove. The 1% have discovered something that most of the world still misunderstands. Real power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't shout or flail or rush to defend its position. It sits quietly, composed, watching chaos unfold, knowing that emotion clouds judgment while calm sharpens it. We live in a world addicted to noise. Everyone is rushing to speak first, to react, to have an opinion, to win an argument. But the truly powerful do not compete in that game. They have learnt the discipline of stillness, of thinking before speaking, of pausing before responding, of choosing clarity over urgency. Their calm is not weakness, it's control. And control, in any setting, is the highest form of influence. Think of the people who've left the deepest marks on history. They didn't panic in the face of storms. They navigated them. There's a story about a CEO who walked into a boardroom one morning to find his company on the verge of collapse. The room was chaos, voices raised, tempers flaring, everyone blaming everyone else. He didn't speak for the first 5 minutes. He simply observed. When he finally did speak, his tone was low, steady, deliberate. "We will fix this," he said, "but not if we act like we're drowning." Those words, spoken quietly, calmed an entire room. It wasn't charisma, it was composure. In that moment, he didn't just lead the company, he anchored it. Calm is a mirror that reveals who's truly in control. Anyone can appear confident when things are going well, but when the ground shakes, when markets fall, when criticism arrives, when everything begins to unravel, most people reveal their fragility. The elite don't. They slow down when others speed up. They breathe when others panic. They observe when others react. And because of that, they see what others miss. This kind of calm isn't something you're born with, it's something you build. It's the product of self-awareness, repetition, and restraint. It's knowing that your tone will do more work than your words, that silence can be a strategy, and that not every situation deserves a reaction. The powerful understand that losing your composure means handing your power to someone else. The loudest person in the room often has the least control over themselves. The calmest, meanwhile, commands the room without even trying. Consider Nelson Mandela, sitting across from men who once imprisoned him, negotiating the future of a nation. Imagine the restraint it took to listen, to remain steady, to speak softly when his entire being could have screamed for justice. His calm wasn't submission, it was the clearest signal of strength. It told the world, "You cannot provoke me. I decide when to act." That kind of poise can change the course of history because it disarms chaos. People expect anger, they expect defensiveness. Calm, instead, confuses them. It creates an energy of authority so natural it cannot be forced. In the modern world, calmness has become a superpower precisely because it's so rare. Think of how people behave online. Every disagreement turns into a shouting match, every opinion a battle. But look at those who rise above it. They don't engage in every argument. They don't rush to correct or defend. They let noise pass by like wind against a mountain. They choose dignity over display. That's how the elite move, not hurried, not flustered, but intent. Because calmness isn't the absence of feeling, it's the mastery of it. There's a story about a young investor who once asked an older mentor how he remained so composed when markets crashed. The mentor smiled and said, "Because panic doesn't pay." It's simple advice, almost too simple, but that's the point. Emotion clouds logic. Calm reveals it. The 1% know that emotions are temporary, but decisions can be permanent. And so, they refuse to let momentary panic dictate lasting consequences. Calmness also transforms communication. When a person speaks slowly and deliberately, their words land differently. They carry gravity. They sound confident even when they're uncertain. The calm voice becomes the steady drumbeat people rally around in confusion. Think of how pilots speak during emergencies. No matter what's happening, their tone remains even. It's not just professionalism, it's psychology. Their calm transfers to others. People begin to breathe easier, to trust, to follow. That's the hidden power of composure. It's contagious. The 1% use calm as a silent persuasion tool. They know that the human brain equates steadiness with safety and certainty. When everyone else loses control, the person who remains unshaken automatically becomes the leader. In business meetings, in negotiations, in crises, the calm one wins, not because they always have the best idea, but because they can think clearly while others drown in emotion. Calm doesn't just inspire confidence, it creates it. But calm is not passive. It doesn't mean inaction or indifference. It means choosing your battles with precision. It means refusing to waste energy on things that don't serve your purpose. The elite have trained themselves to distinguish between noise and signal, between urgency and importance. They save their energy for what truly matters. When they finally act, their moves are decisive, not impulsive. That's why they appear so effortlessly powerful, because their actions are never reactions. They are responses rooted in thought. To cultivate this kind of calm, you have to learn to be comfortable with discomfort. Most people panic because silence feels awkward, because uncertainty feels unbearable. But calm individuals have made peace with both. They understand that silence gives them leverage. It makes others reveal more, talk more, expose their intentions. The powerful listen, not to reply, but to understand, to diagnose. Their calm allows them to see through the fog of emotion and reach the truth faster than anyone else. In negotiations, this trait is invaluable. Imagine sitting across from someone trying to provoke you, raising their voice, questioning your ability, pushing for a reaction. The average person bites. They defend themselves, their pride takes over, and they lose focus. The calm individual simply observes, unbothered. When they finally respond, their words are measured, controlled, often disarming. Their restraint becomes their strategy. And that strategy wins more than intellect ever could. Calm also signals confidence in your own timing. The 1% are rarely rushed. They know that the world rewards those who can wait, who can observe a situation long enough to understand it before acting. They don't chase outcomes, they shape them. Their calm creates the illusion of certainty, even when none exists. And that illusion often becomes reality because people gravitate towards steadiness in a chaotic world. The irony is that calmness can be louder than shouting. When someone remains composed amid chaos, the contrast draws attention. It's magnetic. Others sense the discipline it takes and they subconsciously defer to it. It's the difference between fire that burns out quickly and the steady glow that warms an entire room. One is dramatic, the other endures. Anyone can learn this art. It begins with self-restraint, the ability to observe your emotions without obeying them. It's noticing the rise of frustration or fear and choosing not to feed it. It's taking a breath when others raise their voices. It's trusting that silence can protect your power better than any argument. Calmness requires humility because it means letting go of the need to win every moment. It means valuing the long game over instant gratification. The 1% don't let their emotions steer their decisions. They let their vision do it. Their calm allows them to think several moves ahead, like chess players who can already see the end game while others are still reacting to the last move. They understand that whoever stays calm longest controls the tempo, and whoever controls the tempo controls the outcome. So when you see them sitting quietly in chaos, don't mistake their silence for passivity. It is not surrender, it is calculation. It is the confidence of someone who knows that storms always end, that emotion always fades, and that composure always wins. Their calm is not absence of power, it is power, refined to its purest form. It's the difference between reacting and reigning, and that more than money or status is what truly separates the 1% from everyone else. They speak from knowledge, not ego. That is the quiet difference between those who build things that last and those who simply want to be seen. The most powerful voices in the world don't shout their brilliance, they earn it. Their confidence isn't born from pride, but from preparation. They've spent years gathering insight, testing ideas, learning from failure, and turning information into understanding. When they finally speak, it isn't to impress, it's to illuminate. Most people speak to be admired. The elite speak to be useful. Their words don't exist to decorate conversations, but to deepen them. When they share an opinion, it's grounded in something real, experience, reflection, or fact. They don't need to convince you they're right, because truth, when spoken clearly, convinces on its own. Their authority doesn't come from ego, it comes from evidence. There's a quiet beauty in that. Ego tries to dominate, knowledge seeks to elevate. When a person speaks from ego, you can feel it, the need to win, to be the smartest in the room, to claim every inch of credit. It's noisy, fragile, exhausting. But when someone speaks from knowledge, the energy changes. They don't compete for attention, they command it naturally. They ask questions that open space instead of closing it. They speak with humility because they know how much there still is to learn. Think of the people you've trusted most in your life. Chances are they weren't the loudest or the most dramatic. They were the ones who spoke calmly, who took their time before answering, who seemed to carry truth like a weight they respected. That's what it means to speak from knowledge. You carry your words as responsibility, not as performance. You don't use them to build your ego, you use them to build bridges. Real intelligence doesn't need to announce itself. The truly knowledgeable person doesn't say, I know everything. They say, here's what I've learnt, and here's what I'm still trying to understand. There's humility in that sentence, a humility that makes others listen. The elite understand that certainty is brittle. Curiosity is power. They stay curious long after others stop questioning. And because of that, they continue to grow. Ego, on the other hand, is loud and anxious. It needs constant validation. It can't stand being challenged. It mistakes volume for impact and opinion for wisdom. You can spot it easily. The person who interrupts others, who quotes success without living it, who speaks before they've thought. Ego talks to dominate a room. Knowledge speaks to transform it. There's a story about a young executive who attended a meeting with several senior leaders. She came prepared, confident, but when she arrived, she noticed something strange. The most powerful person at the table said almost nothing for the first half hour. He listened. He took notes. Only when the room began circling the same point for too long did he finally speak. In 2 sentences, he summarized the issue and offered a clear direction forward. It wasn't loud, it wasn't showy, but the decision was made the moment he spoke. That's what knowledge sounds like. Measured, thoughtful, decisive. The 1% know that silence is not ignorance, it's observation. They understand that you can't learn while you're talking, so they listen. They ask questions not to trap people, but to uncover insight. They're not interested in being right, they're interested in being effective. That's why their words hold weight. They come from a place of comprehension, not competition. To speak from knowledge also means to accept what you don't know. There's power in saying, I'm not sure, or let me learn more. Most people think admitting uncertainty makes them weak. In reality, it makes them trustworthy. The elite don't fear not knowing, they fear pretending. Because pretense, once exposed, destroys credibility faster than ignorance ever could. Knowledge-driven speech has another trait. It's grounded in empathy. The wise don't use their understanding to belittle. They use it to clarify. They can explain complex ideas simply without making others feel small. That's because they remember what it felt like not to know. Their intelligence is warm, not cold. They don't stand on a pedestal. They kneel beside you and say, here, let me show you what I've learnt. In every field, you see the same pattern. The best teachers, leaders, and creators are those who never stop learning. They read relentlessly. They study patterns. They test assumptions. And over time, their words begin to reflect that depth. When they speak, it feels less like advice and more like truth that's been lived, shaped, and earned. Ego can't replicate that. It may dazzle for a moment, but it fades as quickly as applause. Knowledge endures because it's rooted in something real. When someone speaks from a lifetime of learning, their words have gravity. You can feel the weight of experience behind them. They don't need theatrics. Their calm conviction is enough. Anyone can begin to speak this way. It starts with curiosity, reading more than you talk, listening more than you argue. It means trading pride for perspective. It means asking, what can I learn from this person, this moment, this mistake? Because the more you know, the less you need to prove. And that's the quiet secret of the 1%. They don't need to dominate the room because they are the room's foundation. Their knowledge speaks for them. Their wisdom doesn't come from ego. It comes from time, attention, and the courage to stay teachable. They understand that influence isn't built by being the loudest voice. It's built by being the most grounded one. When they speak, the world doesn't just hear words, it feels understanding. That is the difference between knowledge and ego. One ends when the talking stops. The other begins when the listening does. They frame every conversation as a value exchange. The people who rise to the top of their fields understand something most of the world overlooks. Every interaction is an opportunity to give or to drain, to build or to waste. The elite do not speak merely to fill time or prove intelligence. They treat words like currency, something to be spent with purpose, invested wisely, and returned with interest. Every conversation to them is a transaction of value, not of vanity. Most people approach conversations thinking, what can I get out of this? They enter with their needs first, their agenda, their desire to be understood, to be admired, to be seen. But those who truly excel understand that influence begins not with taking, but with giving. They ask instead, what can I contribute? What can I offer that improves this exchange? That small mental shift between extraction and contribution changes everything. It turns routine discussions into collaborations and strangers into allies. If you watch the most persuasive and respected people, you'll notice that they never dominate a conversation, they elevate it. They make others feel smarter, heard, capable. Their presence doesn't shrink a room, it expands it. They don't hoard information to appear powerful. They share it to empower, because they know that giving insight, guidance, or even a well-placed question builds trust. And trust, once earned, becomes the most valuable form of capital there is. There's a story of a young entrepreneur who once met a well-known investor at a conference. The entrepreneur spent 10 minutes passionately pitching his idea, barely pausing for breath. When he finished, the investor smiled politely and said, "You've told me what you want from me. Now tell me, what's in this for the world?" That single question shifted his perspective forever. The lesson was simple but profound. The most valuable conversations aren't built on self-interest. They're built on shared interest. The elite never lose sight of that balance. To frame a conversation as a value exchange means understanding that communication is not performance, it's service. It's not about impressing others with how much you know. It's about improving what others can know or feel after speaking with you. Every sentence should offer clarity, empathy, or insight. Even disagreement, when handled with respect, can add value. If it expands understanding instead of feeding ego. The best communicators can turn opposition into opportunity simply by shifting the focus from winning to learning. This mindset also explains why the powerful tend to attract opportunity effortlessly. People want to be around those who make them feel capable and seen. They want to collaborate with those who bring energy, solutions, and ideas rather than complaints. The 1% speak in ways that spark momentum. They don't dwell on problems. They pivot to possibilities. They approach even casual conversations with a quiet generosity. A sense that your time too has worth. And in a world full of people shouting to be heard, that kind of presence feels magnetic. But this approach requires humility. It means releasing the need to constantly assert yourself. It means being genuinely curious about others, their goals, their fears, their perspective. It means asking thoughtful questions, not as strategy, but as respect, because curiosity is the highest form of attention, and attention is the rarest gift we can give. When someone feels truly listened to, their walls drop, their trust grows, and that trust becomes the foundation on which influence is built. The elite have mastered this art. They know that giving attention doesn't diminish them, it multiplies their impact. In negotiations, in boardrooms, even in friendships, they use language to create mutual benefit. When they propose an idea, they frame it as a shared gain. Here's how this can help both of us. When they ask for something, they attach it to value. Here's what I can bring in return. It's never manipulation, it's alignment. Their focus is not on extraction, but on exchange. This principle applies far beyond business. In personal relationships too, value exchange defines the strength of connection. The people who enrich your life are the ones who give energy, encouragement, laughter, perspective, not just take your time or drain your spirit. Those who live with this awareness understand that every word, every gesture, every small kindness is part of an ongoing trade between souls. You leave something behind with every interaction. The question is, what? To live this way requires intention. You have to train yourself to enter conversations not with the instinct to prove something, but to add something. Sometimes that means offering knowledge, sometimes it's empathy, sometimes it's silence. Value doesn't always mean advice. It can simply mean being present in a world that rarely is. The people who make others feel valued create invisible networks of loyalty and respect that money cannot buy. When they speak, the elite think long term. They understand that value compounds just like interest. A single thoughtful word today might open a door years later. A moment of kindness may echo in ways you'll never see. They give without immediate expectation because they know that generosity is its own reputation, and reputation once built does more work than any sales pitch ever could. Framing conversations as value exchanges also means holding yourself accountable for the energy you bring. Every room has an emotional temperature, and the person who can raise it without overwhelming it becomes indispensable. That's why the most successful people rarely gossip, rarely complain, rarely waste words on negativity. They know that every moment spent tearing something down is a moment stolen from building something worthwhile. Their speech uplifts, even when it critiques. It challenges, but it never condescends. And because they give value so freely, value flows back to them naturally. Opportunities, partnerships, ideas, they all gravitate toward those who make others better. It's not luck. It's not charm. It's the inevitable return on investment of speaking with intention and generosity. Every conversation is a chance to leave someone richer than you found them, not necessarily in money, but in perspective, courage, or hope. The elite never forget this. They treat human interaction as a sacred economy, one where the true wealth lies not in what you take, but in what you give. And once you begin to see communication through that lens, you stop trying to win conversations and start transforming them. That is the difference between talking and leading, between being heard and being remembered. They speak vision, not circumstance. That is the difference between those who lead and those who follow, between those who shape the world and those who are shaped by it. The elite have learned a secret that most people never do. Words have the power to create reality. When they speak, they do not describe life as it currently stands. They describe it as it could be. They talk in futures, not frustrations, while others drown in the details of the present. They're already speaking from a place that doesn't exist yet, but soon will. A circumstance is temporary, vision is enduring. The people who rise above mediocrity understand that every great achievement begins as something invisible, an idea, a belief, a conviction strong enough to survive doubt. When they talk, you can feel that conviction. There's a sense of inevitability in their voice, a calm certainty that the world will eventually catch up to the picture they're painting. That's what makes their words magnetic. They speak not to reflect reality, but to reshape it. Think of how inventors, leaders, or artists throughout history have spoken about their dreams. When they first shared their visions, people called them unrealistic, arrogant, even mad. But that's the language of those trapped by circumstance. The visionary doesn't speak from what is. They speak from what could be. When people laughed at the idea of light without fire or flight without wings, someone refused to accept that laughter as fact. Their words became blueprints long before a single invention was built. You can tell when someone speaks from circumstance. Their words carry resignation. They sound defeated before they begin. That's just the way things are, they say, as if the present is permanent. But those who speak vision speak as if they are authors, not victims. They use language that moves forward. I will. We're building. This is only the beginning. Even when they stand in ruins, they talk as if they're standing in the foundation of something new. This way of speaking doesn't come from ignorance or blind optimism. It comes from discipline. The discipline of seeing possibility even when logic argues against it. It's easy to speak vision when life is kind, when the path is clear and the wind is at your back. But the truly powerful keep speaking it when everything around them screams failure. They know that vision is a muscle. It strengthens every time it's used under pressure. The world often confuses realism with wisdom, but realism, when left unchecked, becomes a cage. It teaches you to look only at what exists, never at what might. The elite reject that limitation. They use their words to stretch the horizon, to make the impossible feel familiar. They understand that if you describe your life only by your current circumstances, you'll stay exactly where you are. But if you begin to speak from vision, if you start saying when, not if, you invite the future in. It's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing which story to feed. When you talk about your limitations, you strengthen them. When you talk about your direction, you strengthen your destiny. The elite speak as if the world they want already exists, because that belief makes others start to see it too. They don't deny reality. They simply refuse to be ruled by it. They understand that the mind believes what it hears most often, and the body follows where the mind leads. There's a story about a teacher who once asked a group of children to draw their dream job. Most of them drew what they saw around them, teachers, doctors, shopkeepers, but one child drew herself holding a microphone on a giant stage with the word world written across the crowd. When asked why, she said, "Because one day the world will listen to me." That's the essence of vision. It doesn't describe what's visible, it describes what's possible. People who speak from vision ignite others. Their language becomes contagious. It changes the emotional temperature of a room. When they talk, people sit up straighter, breathe deeper, and start to believe again. Their words plant seeds in others' minds, seeds of hope, of ambition, of courage. They turn doubt into dialogue and fear into fuel. That's why visionaries often face resistance. Their words threaten comfort. They remind others of what's possible, and possibility can be terrifying. You speak vision. You must first see beyond yourself. The elite don't speak only of personal gain or private success. Their vision includes others. It's collective, expansive. They talk about building, uplifting, transforming. Their words create belonging. When they say we, it isn't for show. It's because they understand that greatness never happens alone. That's why people follow them, not because of their wealth or status, but because of how they make others feel, seen inside a greater story. Even in their failures, they maintain language that leans toward the future. When they lose, they don't say, "It's over." They say, "It's not done yet." That one sentence changes everything. It keeps movement alive, because the moment your words surrender, your mind does too. The elite protect their languages fiercely as their assets, knowing that careless words can bankrupt belief. This isn't about pretending your pain doesn't exist. It's about refusing to let pain write your story. Speaking from vision means acknowledging struggle while insisting on meaning. It's the difference between saying I failed and saying I learned, between saying I'm lost and saying I'm still finding my way. The facts don't change, but the future you create with them does. When you speak vision, you pull tomorrow into today. You draw a map for others to follow. You turn invisible things, hope, imagination, belief, into solid ground. And the more you speak that language, the more the world starts to respond, because vision, once spoken with conviction, has a way of bending reality toward itself. The 1% know this. They don't describe the world they're in. They describe the world they're building. And in time, that world becomes real, not because they waited for it, but because they dared to speak it first. To speak like the 1% is not to imitate their accent or vocabulary. It's to adopt their mindset. It's to understand that every word either builds or breaks your reputation. Every tone either invites or repels opportunity. The elite didn't get there by chance. They got there by mastering the simplest form of power, the spoken word. So speak with purpose. Stay calm when others panic. Build knowledge before you broadcast opinions. Bring value, not vanity. And most importantly, speak your vision until the world starts to believe it with you. Because in the end, your words don't just describe your world. They create it.